What is up guys, Grandpa Chillo here, today bringing you a match between D Reaper and MetalGarurumon X from our recent locals tournament. Shout out to our LGES Tower Games. The player on the right starts us off by hatching a Sumemon and raising and digivolves into a Gabumon on top. He then decides to play out a Searcher Gabu, revealing the top 3 cards of the deck, and decides to grab the Garurumon X. The rest go to the bottom of the deck. Player on the left goes ahead and hatches into another D Reaper and then decides to play a Searcher for 1 to draw a card since there are no other Searchers on the field, and then plays out another Searcher paying his full cost to draw a card, putting the opponent at 1 memory. This is one of the powerful aspects of D Reaper, being able to effectively use her memory, most of the times choking the opponent at 1 memory. Blue player is thinking about his next move and then decides to swing in the Gabumon into security, hitting a Spiral Masquerade which gives it negative 6k DP, and then plays out another Searcher Gabu, leaving the opponent at 2 memory, revealing the top 3 cards and deciding to grab the Garurumon X Antibody. The rest go to the bottom of the deck. Now Mother D Reaper enters the board, and even though she is a Digitama, she can stay on the board with a whopping 15k DP, unaffected by opponent's card effects, although she can't attack. She activates her effect to absorb one of the Searchers on the field, placing it as a Digivolution card. We see now the Pendulum Feet being played out for 2 memory, revealing the top 3 cards of the deck, being a Gatekeeper, a Jerry, and another Pendulum Feet. He decides to grab the Pendulum Feet and add it to hand, and the rest go to the bottom of the deck. He goes ahead and plays it out again, revealing the top 3 cards of the deck, this time grabbing a Searcher and another Pendulum Feet, passing the turn at 3 memory. Opponent now decides to raise up the stack, which I think is a bad decision considering you don't even have the Garurumon or Garurumon X in raising, and you don't even have the Gabumon X to put on top of it. He goes in and digivolves into the Garurumon X, unlucky that he drew the Garurumon right after digivolving into the Garurumon X. Kind of in a bad situation here, but let's see what he does next. I will at least swing security with the Gabumon since it's not really doing anything for him at the moment, and in this particular matchup you really need to pile on the aggression before the left player can set up a predominant board state. Right player takes a moment to think about his next move, probably wishing he had the Garurumon before the Garurumon X. This is definitely not the start you want to see with this deck. He decides to digivolve into the Garurumon promo, passing the turn at 2 memory. We see now the left player activates the effect of Mother D Reaper to absorb another Searcher underneath the Mother D. Getting a Searcher each turn under Mother D Reaper is the best way to ensure that that Reaper comes out fast for the finisher and you're able to effectively reduce your play costs. He now decides to play down another Searcher for 1 since there are no other Searchers on the field, and goes ahead and draws a card. He then drops the Pendulum Feet, which we had previously seen in his hand for 1 due to Mother D's effect, grabbing a Bubbles. and it seems the Garurumon player's stack will go unpunished this turn. Yep, we see the bubbles being dropped to add a searcher from hand to Mother D's Digivolutions, passing the turn with 3 memory. Player hatches into a Tsumemon and now decides to add the X Antibody option underneath the stack, which allows us when attacking to Digivolve into a Digimon with X Antibody in its traits. He swings into security, activating X Antibody's inheritable, Digivolving into the Garurumon X, attacking for 1 check since it appears he does not have the 8 cards in hand for the Garurumon inheritable. He hits a searcher, which allows him to live the check. We see the Gabumon finally swing in, unfortunately hitting the Gatekeeper in security, which allows the opponent to recover +1, and if Mother D Reaper gets to 6 sources underneath, it will give security -1 to everything on the opposing board. He hammers Sparks to gain 1 memory, and then swings into the security with Garurumon X, and since the X Antibody inheritable is not once per turn, he chooses to Digivolve into MetalGarurumon X, now following through with the attack for 1 check since it appears he does not yet have the 8 cards in hand for the Garurumon inheritable. He checks into an X Antibody, effectively ending his turn as the opposing player gains 1 memory off of it. Not a lot of memory to work with. Here, left player chooses to clear the Gabumon with Searcher, boosted by Mother D's inheritables, then absorbs it back into the Mother. Very good play by the D Reaper player here. He now has the X Antibody option we saw earlier in security underneath the Mother D, getting to 5 sources now underneath it, so close to activating the Gatekeeper's effect, and can now reduce play cost of D Reapers by 5, and honestly it is not looking so good for the Garurumon player right now. Although if the stack isn't dealt with, it could maybe go into security and Omnimon for game. We see no yellow sources on the field for the left player, so the Wyvern Split in hand can't be played. We see the Searcher played out for 1, I think. Yep, he plays it out for 1. Looking for a potential response to the stack maybe. Now we go ahead and start swinging with the Pendulum Feet, hitting a Garurumon X. We swing in the other Pendulum Feet, hitting a Gabumon, and the final Pendulum hit, hitting a Hammer Spark, passing the turn over with 2 memory. This could be a good sign for the Garurumon player. If he has the Omnimon, he may take this game. He swings into security with the MetalGarurumon X, unfortunately hitting the bubbles, which adds another searcher to the bottom of Mother D's sources, with a security effect activating the effect of Gatekeeper, giving security -1 to the opposing field, which stops any possible comebacks from happening this turn. We see now the blue memory boost being played, revealing the top 4 cards of the deck, and the player decides to grab the Gabumon. Unfortunate that the Gabumon didn't appear to be digivolved in the raising before. He activates Mother D's effect to absorb another searcher, now at 7 sources underneath the Mother. We see the Reaper in hand, so he could potentially come out, but it looks like it won't really matter since we've got such a wide port state. He's thinking about whether or not to swing in. He now decides to swing with the Pendulum Feet, checking an X Antibody, giving the opponent 1 memory. All we have to do now is swing the rest of the board into security, and that's game 1. Even though MetalGarurumon X has blocker, he can only prevent 1 attack from hitting the security, and counting the Reaper is going to be a lot of attacks. He swings in with the Gatekeeper, opponent choosing to block, removing 2 sources to avoid deletion since it is at a very high DP threshold due to Mother D's inheritables. This is basically game 1 now since there isn't much else that can happen here, unless the right player reveals a Hammer Spark or X Antibody and Raising, it's basically over. Looks like the players are discussing their board state. Let's see what happens. He decides to swing in the Pendulum Feet, checking a Garurumon X, and that's game 1, folks. Rough inning for the MetalGarurumon player. Off to game 2, I believe right player decides to go first here. Just setting up their board states. Yep, he proceeds to hatch into the Sumemon and devolve into Gabumon X in Raising, then plays out a Bodoki Betamon, another rough start for the right player. Left player hatches the Mother D Reaper, and now plays a Searcher for 1 to draw a card. He then goes ahead and plays the Pendulum Feet to search again the top 3 cards of the deck, grabbing 2 more searchers into the hand and putting the opponent at 1 memory. The rest go to the bottom of the deck. Right player digivolves in Raising into the Garurumon and passes the turn at 1 memory. We see Mother D Reaper come into the battle area, activating its effect to add the searcher into its sources. He then plays out another searcher for 1 to draw a card, and then adds the X Antibody option underneath Mother D's sources. This is followed by a Bubbles being played to add the searcher into Mother D's sources for a cost of 1, being reduced by Mother's effect. Right player still in Raising decides to digivolve into Garurumon X, and then I believe he digivolves into the WereGarurumon promo in Raising. Yep, there we see it. He goes ahead and digivolves, leaving the opponent at 2 memory. He goes ahead and hatches another Mother D Reaper in that back just in case. And then he plays down another searcher, then immediately absorbs it into Mother D Reaper. He then plays out a Jerry, reducing the cost to 1, then suspending to activate its effect and search the top 5 cards of the deck to add a searcher underneath Mother D, and the rest go to the bottom of the deck. Now we see him playing a searcher, passing the turn at 1 memory. The Reaper is very good at choking opponents without memory tamers. The right player decides to keep this stack in raising and place a blue memory boost, passing the turn at 2 memory and grabbing a Gabumon Searcher. The rest go to the bottom of the deck. We saw the Omnimon go down unfortunately, so that definitely closes some options there if he can't fight the other Omnimon. Now the left player activates Mother D's effect to add a searcher underneath, then taps the Jerry to reveal another top 5 and add another searcher to the bottom of Mother D Reaper's sources. Mother D now has 7 sources underneath. Unfortunately, we see that the left player does not have the Reaper in hand, so he goes ahead, I believe, and plays another searcher for 1 memory to keep the consistency and draw a card. Yep, he goes ahead and plays down the searcher for 1, and I believe he plays here the Karikamiya Tamer, putting the opponent at 3 memory. Right player decides to move up the stack, thinking whether or not he should attack security. He goes ahead and swings in, triggering the unsuspend, and let's see what he checks. Hitting a Reaper. Now having to trash 2 sources from underneath, so the stack won't have protection now if he decides to keep swinging into security. Right now, the right player needs to pile on the aggression, even if the stack ends up dying, because he doesn't have much time left on Mother D's countdown. We already saw the 7 sources underneath. If the left player gets a Reaper, it is basically over. Right player just taking a moment to think. This is a very hard position to come back from, and it will require lots of brain power and luck to get out of this one. We saw the Garurumon X in hand already and the X Antibody option. The correct play would probably be here to add the X Antibody underneath the stack and swing in, devolving into the Garurumon X and unsuspending mid-attack. Players are taking a moment to talk about the report state. This is a very bad position for the Garurumon player right now. We see him opting to digivolve directly into the Garurumon X instead of adding the X Antibody and swinging in to evolve into it, effectively losing a check. He now decides to digivolve into the EX1 MetalGarurumon, gaining back 2 memory, 1 for every card in hand. He then swings into security for what looks like being 2 checks, hitting a Pendulum Feet and a Starmon. He goes ahead and pops the memory boost to gain back that 2 memory, and then I see the Searcher Gabu. Yep, he plays out the Searcher Gabu, but unfortunately he hits no targets, so they all go to the bottom of the deck. He swings in with the Modoki Bayamon that has been sitting on the field for a while, which dies to security hitting a Searcher. Fortunately, he plays down an Ice Wall, which prevents the opposing player from hitting in with too many checks and could potentially lead to a game 2 win for the Garurumon player. We see the left player activating Mother D's effect to add yet another Searcher underneath, now at A sources. Thinking what to do, he goes ahead and decides to tap the Jerry to look at the top 5 and grab yet another Searcher to add underneath Mother D, and the rest go to the bottom. We see the Reaper getting bottom decked, which is unfortunate considering another Reaper is in the trash, so the chances of finishing up with Reaper now are looking kind of slim. We're currently at 9 sources, which makes every D Reaper hit like a truck going 100 through the freeway. Left player is thinking about what to do now. We see the Pilates head in hand, which can be played for free by Mother D Reaper's effect to remove the Gabumon from the field, since it is still not high enough to remove the MetalGarurumon stack from the field. We can also play down a Searcher for a memory cost of 1 to draw and see if we have any more potential plays. There are a lot of different combinations of cards that could be played at the moment, both to draw cards, expand the field, and or remove the opposing player's Digimon. We also see the Wyvern's Breath in hand, which could be another potential removal, but he goes ahead and plays out the Searcher to go ahead and draw 1. We see the Spiral Masquerade being drawn, which adds yet another removal option to the hand. Remember, even though we have such a wide board state, we still have the Ice Wall effect on the field, so any attack will lose him 2 memory. He needs to wipe the board to avoid any potential upsets and secure the game, since we do not see the Gatekeeper in hand. As I said, he has multiple options of removal at the moment. He has the Wyvern Breath, the Spiral Masquerade, and the Pilates head in hand. Let's see what he plays. He finally decides to play down the Pilates head for free, taking down the Gabumon. He then plays out the Spiral Masquerade to delete the opposing player's stack, leaving him at 2 memory, unfortunate for the Garurumon player. Right player hatches into another Sumimon, then digivolves into Gabumon for free. Then digivolves into Garurumon and draws a card, and then the Garurumon X on top. He then plays down a Cool Boy, passing the turn at 2 memory, Kari setting the opponent at 3 memory. We unsuspend our field. We go ahead and activate Mother D Reaper's effect yet again to absorb another searcher into sources. Then we activate Jerry's effect to add another searcher under the Mother D, now at a whopping 11 sources underneath the Mother D Reaper. He plays out another searcher. Now we're seeing he's counting his sources, then swinging in with the Pilates head for 14k, hitting a MetalGarurumon X. He then swings with the bubbles for 14k, hitting a Gabumon, and then the pendulum feet for another 14k, hitting a Wergarumon X. Although the D Reaper has a dominant board state, the right player could still potentially take the game if he has the right cards. The left player decides to play a Jerry for free, activating its effect to add yet another searcher underneath the Mother D Reaper, now at 12 sources. We saw the Lucemon being bottom deck, interesting tech for the deck. We see him play down another searcher to draw a card, passing the turn at 1 memory. We see the right player raise up the stack and swings into security, hitting a searcher. There is not much he can do here because he has so little memory to work with. He plays down a Gabumon, leaving the opponent at 2 memory, and Kari setting him to 3. This looks like a game 2 win for D Reaper since he can just swing in for multiple checks and end the game. He decides to play down the Gatekeeper for free because why not, recovers his security, and then proceeds to swing in with bubbles, hitting a blue memory boost, then the Pilates head hitting a Wergarumon X, and then the Jerry to end the game. Good game to both players. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you all next time.